Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson. And we're going to attempt to do the first podcast where we don't talk to each other because our football teams play each other in a bowl game. So I don't know how we're going to do this.
I know y'all got to make sure I have enough players to field a team.
It's clockwork. It's every single year. This is why I don't do the North Texas podcast anymore. It's impossible to do.
You got to learn 8 new key players every year.
Football, basketball, everything.
Yeah,
whole new teams. So I could not keep up with it. So good luck to the crew over there.
Yep. Good luck to the team. As a wise man once said, hey, no excuses. Ball up top. Let's go.
No, I got all the excuses.
January 3rd, baby. Let's
I have all the excuses in my back pocket. And don't let us win.
Yeah, I know. That's the worst part too. I know. Who's the freshman quarterback they got?
Cash McCollum?
No, it was
the one they just got.
The walk-on they got because he played. The walk-on's one that played. It wasn't McCollum this year. I don't know if they were redshirting him or what. But yeah, I forgot who it was. But
I think McCollum
strap-up kid, ready to go.
Yeah,
Mestmaker, I think was.
I think McCollum. It shows how I've touched my him. I think McCollum got hurt or something like that. Regardless, this is a basketball podcast.
We're about to figure out who their next quarterback is in the next game. We'll end up with that.
just wait. Whoever it is going to throw 4,000 yards, and we're going to go 6-6 again. So it'll be fun. It'll be a great time. Hey, no, we have a DC now.
Yeah.
We have a DC now. Sam,
that's true. Y'all got a defensive coordinator now. So
all right, basketball talk. This was a fun weekend.
Dude,
this was a very, very fun weekend. We'll talk about TCU South Carolina women's. We'll talk about Texas men's versus UConn. But I want to start with Texas A&M and Texas Tech men's.
Yeah.
Played in Fort Worth in Dickies Arena before.
Dickies Arena doubleheader, by the way. That was
before the TCU South Carolina game. So that was cool. But the one caveat with this, Texas A&M wins 72-67. But the one caveat for this game was JT Toppin did not play for Texas Tech. And so that's what makes this game hard to quantify because I don't know, we can talk about it big picture, like who's the better team. I don't know. On KenPom, I think they're 20. Yeah.
I think they're right next to each other.
24 and 25. Yeah. So I think these teams are very, very much on the same tier. Yeah. But A&M gets the win. I think, Wade Taylor, 19 points, 6-17 shooting, he does what he does. I think Jace Carter going 3 of 4 from 3, 16 points was huge. For Texas Tech. I know Overton hit 4 of 9 from 3. And I think he started the game even better than that. 17 points. Chance McMillan's 23 points. So you had the guards going back and forth. I think very simply put to me, the difference in this game was the offensive rebounding. Texas A&M 18 offensive boards to Texas Tech's 9, which directly correlates to JT Toppin not being on the court.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, if you're Tech, you like the fact that your offense was functioned pretty well without your big man inside against a good defense, as we know, in A&M. And so it was like, okay, they didn't have that, so they still shot pretty well. I think Federico had a pretty good game, right? It was one of those games where you just knew going in he was going to have to play quite a bit, especially oftentimes. I think, let me see, I'm looking at the game. Yeah, he was the only guy over 6'7" that played basically for Tech. So it was a big game for him. Finished with 7 points, 6 rebounds, 4 steals, 4 fouls, of course, because they attacked him a lot. A&M did. But I'll take this as a positive for both teams, honestly. I think this is, if you're Tech, you knew it wasn't going to be your best without JT Toppin. But I kind of was curious to see what do they look like without JT Toppin. As we know, teams don't stay healthy throughout a full season, so you're going to have some ups and downs. And it showed a little bit that, okay, the offense can function a little bit, right? It isn't just Grant is working a little bit more of his efficient offensive magic that we've seen, that we didn't really see last year, but we've seen from him at his previous teams. And so I take this as a positive for Tech. And then for A&M, of course, hey, look, you won a game playing your style. You did not shoot well, right? You got to the line a ton, but you also crashed the boards a ton. And crediting A&M I'll credit them with this. You didn't know what Tech would look like without JT Toppin, right? You probably game planned a ton for him in particular, and you realize he's not playing the day of, and it's like, okay, what happens here? And that gives an advantage in some ways to Tech because they can kind of switch things up a little bit. Maybe they knew a little bit throughout the week that he wasn't going to play. But for A&M, you had to adjust, and I think they did a good job. It's a good win. You don't apologize for beating anybody. So I think if you're A&M, you get Purdue this Saturday, and then you get Texas. Then you open up big SEC play with Texas in January. This and then Saturday was going to be their last test before they basically get nobody until Texas.
Yeah. Early in the game, the big difference to me, and I think throughout the game really, but Texas A&M was able to turn over Texas Tech and get those easy points. Like that was really the only difference early on is they got those easy ones, just forcing turnovers and making Texas Tech uncomfortable. Texas Tech ends the game shooting 31 threes and only 22s.
Yeah, they shot a lot from the outside.
A&M's defense, which is probably my biggest takeaway, like concrete takeaway, because again, without Toppin, I don't want to say anything, crazy either side, because Tech could have very easily won this game. But I think defensively, Texas A&M, and I'm looking on KenPom, 11th in defense right now. That felt like a top 15 defensive performance against Texas Tech, and that's something that we've seen pretty routinely. Coming off of holding Wake Forest to 44 points. Even the Rutgers game where I think Ace Bailey played terrific and so on, Harper 18 points, but like they still beat them, held them to 77. So we know what this team is defensively. Number 11 in the country on defense, number 1 offensive rebounding. Like we've said it last podcast, we've said it throughout the year. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, and like this game wasn't as close as the final score made it seem. I think A&M had like a 8-point lead or something with and then Tech kind of closed it to whatever. That there was like a good sizable gap that A&M was able to kind of. It was kind of like one of those where it's like when they cut the lead to 4, it goes back to 8, right? It was kind of like one of those type of games, and I think the one thing I'll take from A&M, you mentioned the defense. It was a lot of like one dribble pull up for Tech, right? Like off the screen, boom. Let me chuck up a shot because that was all they were kind of getting. Yeah. And of course, when you have guys like McMillan who are willing to take that shot, Darian Williams, Kevin Overton, but that'll be fine to some extent. And obviously, they had a pretty good shooting night. But like, yeah, you're not going to have the shot. If you go back and look at the shots they were taking, those aren't shots you would bet on, right? Yeah. If you're A&M, you're like, yeah, that's fine. Like there's a hand in his face. He got the ball back on a give and go from Federico or something, and then all of a sudden he's jacking a 3. It's like something like that. So yeah, it was a lot of like tough shots that a good shooting team is going to hit some of those sometimes.
Yeah. Big picture real quick. SEC in the SEC, A&M is on KenPom's 6th, which. The SEC is by the number 1 conference by a wide margin right now, and if I named the 5 teams in front of them, they're all basically they're all top 10 teams. It's Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky ahead of them. So I do feel like that's kind of the gap after those 5. It's like who's going to be in the next tier, and I think A&M could is right there with a Mississippi State and Ole Miss, and we'll talk about Texas.
Yeah, Florida potentially being really good is a wrench I didn't have. Yeah. That's thrown into the pile now. I think they get. Let me see. Looks like they get a couple tests. They get Arizona State and North Carolina in the next couple weeks. So like we'll see a little bit. They haven't really played that good of a schedule. So like, are they just squashing bad teams, or is this actually a pretty good team? KenPom seems to think they're pretty good. But if all of a sudden Tennessee or Florida is a top 10, 15 team, then okay, that affects things for Texas and A&M quite a bit.
Yeah. Tex does not have another real test before. They play Lamar, who's 213 in KenPom, but they really only have 2 games between now and the 31st when they start conference play. So at this point, we know what this team is. Like they're going to need Toppin to do a lot, I think. And I like Federico, but they are going to need Toppin to just the sheer offensive rebounding numbers would have been interesting to see how he matched up with A&M. So now you don't have that sample size. Really they have 2 top 150 wins, DePaul and Syracuse. Not like great. So it's going to be a really big awakening here when they start SEC play. Now, to be fair, they start with UCF and Utah, who they should beat, but then it gets more challenging.
Yeah.
So, flipping it to Texas. I asked you last podcast if we should expect Texas to win this game. You said yes, and I was inclined to agree. I think I even did agree outright because they were favored. Honestly, they were favored in the game. They're at home. UConn has looked like a shell of itself, and Texas, I thought, was defending well enough to give UConn problems, and I was wrong.
We were both very, very, very wrong.
All accounts. They lose 76-65. They really just get blown out from the jump. I mean, they were down 22-10. They really never cut it. I don't think they ever cut it within. Oh, when did they cut it again? I don't remember them cutting it within like 8 at any point. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think they did. I think it was 11. I think they might have got it to 10 maybe, but
yeah, they got the doors blown off. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
And at home, do you have any new takeaways or anything you learned or anything from this loss?
Yeah, I kind of want to revisit that thing where I said their defense might be pretty good.
Okay, yeah.
I mentioned that earlier on one of the earlier episodes. I was like, is Texas kind of figuring out how to play defense? No, not really. No. I think they're better than I thought I would give them credit for, right? But this is literally the first like good team they've played, and like not good team.
Well, besides Ohio State, who also lit them up.
Yeah, I'll say top caliber team, right? Top 25 team, I'll say. And they got their doors blown off, particularly on the offensive end in the half court. They looked like they had never seen a slip screen before. They looked like they had never seen. There were so many slip screen layups that just like, did somebody forget something? Like, I don't know. It was bad. It was very bad. Alex Caravan had like so many point blank looks at the rim, and Samson Johnson, like you want a layup? Anybody want a layup? Like just set one screen, slip it, and you're gonna be wide open. And then I think we were texting yesterday. I was coming back from TCU in South Carolina. I texted you, and we were saying this might be a Kevin Durant year. And for Texas fans, I remember that's having a top caliber player, but then only making like the second round or Sweet 16 because you kind of don't have enough else around them.
Kevin Durant's usage percentage was 31.6. Trey Johnson is now up to, it had to have gone up after last game, 28.8. And his shot percentage is 33.8, which is top 25 in the country. This is just more of the same, man. It is Trey Johnson. Please save us.
Yeah.
That's this offense. They had 8 assists for the game. 8 assists. And Trey Johnson had 4 of them.
Right.
So it's like everybody else only had 4 assists on the game. I guarantee you, Trey Johnson's however many makes, 9 makes. How many were assisted? 1?
Probably. Yeah, it feels
max.
like 1 or 2.
Like all the threes, I'm pretty sure were off the dribble. The makes. Like he was hitting step backs and stuff. Like he is an incredible scorer. The problem is it becomes that thing where there's a lot of standing around and watching.
Yes.
When that happens, they only had 7 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
So again, if you're not shooting or scoring, usually you're, and Weaver had 2 offensive rebounds, but usually other players are getting the rebounds or they're cutting or they're making something happen. There's a lot of standing and watching.
There's a lot of standing, particularly, I mentioned this a little bit, particularly in the half court. Like, it's a lot of like, I mentioned the slip screens, but it's a lot of like, as soon as somebody collapses the defense, like you mentioned, it's just like everybody's frozen. And it's like, there's one swing over there. And if they're able to hit the corner, it's a swing to the wing. And it's like somebody's wide open somewhere. And it just looks like the ball was moving legitimately too fast for them to process. Yeah. One, credit to Dan Hurley. That's kind of how UConn's won back-to-back national champions, is that they've been the best team in the half court offensively a lot of the time. But this is a new UConn team. This isn't a team that won back-to-back national titles, right? So yeah, obviously he's that caliber of a coach, but like we haven't seen that from this team in particular this year. And that's why I kind of expected Texas to come in and be favored for a reason. And yeah, you look at a lot of the players on this team, and it's like, it's a lot of pieces. And you mentioned the assists. I don't know where the playmaking comes in or where the new playmaker now comes in and says, this guy's just not doing enough, right? Like I look at them on paper, I was like, yeah, outside of Trey Johnson, I don't know who they look for as their playmaker. Like all those guys, I'm kind of looking at their roster. It's like, yeah, those are kind of guys that don't really pass the ball. Like, like they're not really going to rack up the assists or you run the offense through aside from Trey Johnson to an extent. So like, I can't blame them because I look at the pieces and I was like, yeah, Kendall Weaver's not a point guard, I'm trying to look at other players on this.
Like even Pope, I don't think I'm looking at it now. Like he hasn't had a game over 4 assists this year, and like he's had two against UConn, 2 against NC State. Like
Julian Larry, no. Like I'm not. Tremont Mark, obviously not. Like
they need Mark to be really good, and I think we've said that, but like him scoring 5 points against UConn in 19 minutes is not good enough.
No.
And that's not just a him thing. That's like him. They knew coming into the year, coming off injury and stuff like that, like they were going to need him to produce because without him, then it really becomes just Trey Johnson and then sometimes Kaluma. And Kaluma, I think, was even really good in this game.
Kaluma's probably been their second best player throughout the season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 6 of 11 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, like 9 boards. Kaluma was awesome. And Kaluma's been awesome this entire year. It's just when you watch it, you just feel like something's missing. I guess is the way to say it, because I thought that you could rely on their defense, but they don't have terrific defensive talent.
Right.
They don't. Like I think Rodney Terry,
they defended well in a couple games as a team.
Yeah, as a team, they defended well, and give Rodney Terry credit for like the NC State game and St. Joe's games and those wins, but like they don't have fantastic defensive players. So now it's all right. Can you, if somebody scores 75 on you, can you match them? I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about probably the headliner this week. Women's basketball, TCU, South Carolina. It was supposed to be the headliner, I should say.
Yeah.
But South Carolina said, we're not having any of this. we're not having any of this. You were there in person. Yeah. Where do you start?
Whew. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this season there is a big gap between the top 3 and the top 3 to 5 teams and the top 10 to 15. I think this was South Carolina proving that they're still in that top 3 to 5. And that although I think TCU is much improved, I think their biggest weakness is going to be something that every one of those teams in the top 3 to 5 have, which is size. And the things that you can boil this game down to a couple things, and you talked about one of them with me. One of them is obviously size. In addition to that size is when you can neutralize Sedona Prince, TCU has nothing else. Haley Van Lith got her points, but a lot of those were late, and a lot of those were just her kind of trying to figure something else out. The other thing that you mentioned, and I mentioned this in I kind of singled out Madison Connor because she had a bad sequence in when I texted you. I was like, Madison Connor looks like she ain't built for this, right? And you mentioned it to me. She was like, you were like, yeah, honestly, Haley Van Lith and to an extent Sedona Prince are the only players who have played against a team like this. And it was like, yeah, like you're right. Like and there was one sequence where, again, I singled out Madison Connor, but it was every other player except for Haley Van Lith and Sedona Prince, where they got the ball and they would look like shocked how close they were being pressed on the top of the perimeter. And it was like they were having to move the ball around and it looked like they were like, oh my God, like why is Raven Johnson in my face? Why is Malaysia Fall-Wiley in my face? Like, why is, I'm trying to rebound the ball and Chloe Kitts is like, making like keeping me out with a 10-foot pole. And it's like, what is happening around? Like, it looked like they just had not played against that much length before, and they haven't. And so, yeah, it was a complete demolition. It was a great showcase for South Carolina and Texas, who had it was a great crowd. But yeah, it was very much, I think Mark Campbell spoke about this afterward. He's like, he sounded even keeled, almost like, yeah, I kind of knew that would happen. Or like, I kind of hoped we do better, but like, I think the actual quote was like, we know where we stand now. Right. And I think he said the exact quote, the other part of the quote was, we got exactly what we needed out of, or we wanted to see out of that game or something. And I'll give him credit to it. Cause it's not many times you take a beat down like that. We're like, Okay, cool. Like we know where we're at now, and you can kind of go into the Big 12 and take that.
Yeah, I think you laid it out well. First of all, credit to South Carolina. That is a awesome. Just 1 through 11, just players coming out there. It's exactly what we expected. The top end talent is not, they don't have Boston, Cardoso, Wilson, whatever. But 1 through 11, that is the deepest team in the country, and they're not flawless, but they are still very, very good.
Like, I'm going to bring up some numbers really quick because I didn't look at the box score till today.
I'm
Of
looking
course,
at
they
it
have the
now.
stats at the stadium or the arena on the Jumbotron, but I didn't really look at those. I didn't really look at Sedona Prince's numbers until today, and 6 for 2. She played 33 minutes. 6 and 2, excuse me, 6 points, 2 rebounds. Chloe Kitts destroyed her on the boards. Chloe Kitts finished with 12 rebounds, right? Only 4 points, but her job was basically, hey, keep Sedona Prince out of the paint. Or if you need help, Tahina Pow and then Raven Johnson are going to be there to kind of help around. They fronted her. They made sure she could not touch the ball. Every time Sedona Prince touched the ball, it was mid-range or it was low to the ground to where she couldn't bring the ball up and go for a layup.
Yeah. Ashton Watkins also matched her, and then also had the dunk.
Yes, good point.
Crazy. But like again, they can just kind of rotate in forwards here. Like they barely play Joyce Edwards, who is a crazy player.
The funniest part, I actually busted out laughing. It was like 5 minutes to go in the game, and they brought in Adele Tack, who's from South Grand Prairie, and I was like, oh, they're just bringing in a 5-star player as like a victory cigar. Like it was like, hey, go get some run, Adele Tack, 5-star.
I said
you'd
the
be
same
starting
thing.
at TCU right now. It doesn't matter, but go get some burn real quick. And she got a good elevation, but I just busted out laughing. I was like, oh my god, they're getting her like hometown sympathy minutes. This is crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, to your point, like the ball pressure was magnified. I thought, like you said, Haley Van Lith is the only one that knew how to handle that ball pressure. And she had 5 turnovers, but I think realistically with her limitations, like we know her limitations as a creator and as like a real point guard.
Sure.
But like I thought she clearly was the most comfortable and was the most aggressive and like knew how to attack. And even if shots don't go in, what was she, 7 to 17, which isn't bad.
It wasn't bad. Yeah, she played fine. Like honestly, considering everything, she played fine.
Yeah, she played fine, but it was everybody else around her. You go down the list of players, you don't need to name them, but like everybody else was like, oh no, like I do not enjoy this. I am not having fun right now with, like you said. And Raven Johnson was even pestering Haley early on, but Haley ended up getting loose to her credit. But like Bree Hall, Pow, I mean, all these players, Full Wiley comes in and starts hounding them. I mean, it is just, it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. And if you're not ready for that, and if you don't have size and if you don't have capable wing players like an LSU, you have like a Flage and Michaela Williams, who are like bigger guards that can handle that pressure and stuff. Like that's kind of what you have to have. And we know this TCU team is very, very straightforward, right? It is Haley's going to run 100 ball screens at you with Sedona Prince in the action, and she's either going to pop, roll. They're going to do some motion stuff, handoffs off that. It's not a simple offense. I'm not saying that, but typically where the ball's ending up. Once that was taken away, once Watkins, once Kitts, once they took away Prince's role, once they forced her outside, it was like, okay, we're just going to suffocate you and make you go by us. Yeah. And Haley is the only one that showed any semblance of being able to do that. So credit to her, but it's not even an indictment on TCU, because I don't think how many teams in the country can do what South Carolina just did.
Right. I was about to say, you're looking at literally South Carolina, LSU, UCLA, Texas.
That's it.
Yeah, it's basically it.
And none of them are in the Big 12.
Right.
That's the good news for you, Mark Campbell, is that none of them are in the Big 12. West Virginia is going to pressure you, but they don't have the size to match Sedona Prince. So that's where you get Sedona Prince will probably have 20 and 10 in that game. Even if your guards struggle, you still have a chance. But again, that TCU, you go into now the rest of the season saying, all right, we know where we have to get to when the tournament comes, but game in, game out, Baylor, go down the list, Colorado, Arizona, we can play our style and win these games.
And I think 2 things can be true. I think South Carolina played one of their best games. Like I think they shot 40% from three.
Very
Like
true.
that's not going to happen a lot, right? And I also don't think TCU played their best game, right? I think, don't get me wrong, I think that game's still 15-point lead, even if TCU plays a quote unquote good game. But there were some layups missed by Haley Van Lith. There were some bad bobbled, I think Aaliyah Roberson had like 3 turnovers and, she barely handles the ball. So it's like, there was a lot of sloppiness. So like 2 things can be true that like, yes, South Carolina is the better team and definitively the better team, probably still 10, 15 points, even on TCU's best night right now. But I also think there were some moments in the game where I'm like, that looks really sloppy and like un-TCU like. And the last thing I noticed that this is something that I think they can fix going into the future is I think they let South Carolina slow the game down, which is something that they don't want to do. South Carolina, because when they get on the break, South Carolina, Malaysia Fawali in the fast break, Ashton Watkins had a dunk, right? They can get out and run. But I think TCU got panicked and started to slow the game down, and it caused a lot of second guessing. It caused a lot of things that South Carolina was able to exploit. So you mentioned it though, like how many teams can exploit that? 5, right? Maybe. And none of them are in the Big 12. So like, okay, cool. You have teams with size and then you have teams that can press, but no teams that have both. So like, yeah, this is a problem that you won't have to worry about till March. Okay, cool. You've made it to March. All of a sudden, now you can worry about that when you worry about that.
Elite Eight, we'll revisit this.
I was about to say, it's like, oh, okay, if it doesn't happen until you face Lauren Betts, okay, that's fine. You'll take that.
It's like, okay, yeah, we're gearing up for the schools. I mean, when's the last time TCU made Sweet 16?
Yeah, no, like, yeah,
top of my head, I'd have to think about that. But yeah, that's. I think it was good, like Kimball said, to understand. Like we beat Notre Dame, we beat NC State. We know we are good enough to hang, with probably the second tier, like you said. I think there's a top 4 that separates itself, but
yeah. And I'm looking now; they have never made a Sweet 16.
Exactly. So yeah, take it on the chin. Let's go.
Yep. Ball up top.
Ball up top. Texas State men's
beat
Rice 75-66. I watched some of this, watched the highlights afterwards to make sure I wasn't going crazy. Texas State,
I got the result on my phone. I was like, excuse me?
Texas State, going into the year, you tried to downplay them. You were
I did.
I'm trying not to set expectations too high. I was like, I don't know. I think this backcourt's really, really good with Gums and Morgan and so on. And they're hooping. They're absolutely hooping. 75-66 win over Rice. And Rice early on took a lead. And I was like, Rice is hammering the paint. Yeah. I'm really worried about the interior for Texas State. But then they just bounced right back, and they just looked faster than Rice. And I know this is Rob Lanier's first year, so, it's whatever. It's a mosh pit of different guys here. But we know Rice has the size with a Caden Powell and a Kellen Amos, who's also pretty big. Trey Patterson, who left the game early. But, like, Texas State just looks faster across the board. Gums, Morgans, all these guys. And so credit to them. And then they came out in 7 of 16 from 3, 18 of 20 from the free throw line, 15 assists, 11 turnovers. Texas State, I thought, really, really impressive offensive game for them.
Yeah. I mean, they're up to 123 in KenPom, which good. I think they finished, I'm trying to think, that might be their highest since 2020, honestly, which is crazy. So again, we're seeing really positive signs. They get FAU. We'll see. I haven't paid attention to FAU this year with John Jacobs, so I'm curious how they look. But that'll be another massive test. And so far, so good. Like legitimately, I didn't think the defense would be this good. The outside shooting's been really, really good. And I think Tyrell Morgan's been somebody that I underestimated, right? I kind of thought that this team would live and die with how Caden Gums done, and he's done fairly well, but this team's kind of been spearheaded by Tyrell Morgan. So we'll see some more. This is a nice surprise. I didn't expect him to win this game. And I remember early on, I said this will be a fun team, and they're continuing to be entertaining. So this is something that can make some noise in the Sun Belt even if they level off a little bit. This is still, like I said, this is their best start since 2020, roughly, as far as numbers wise. So we'll see.
Where are they at in Like, who's the top of the Sun Belt right now? Oh, Arkansas State just beat Memphis.
Let me see.
Arkansas State is 112.
Yeah,
But again,
Troy.
it's a lot of teams in this area right here. Troy, Texas State, James Madison, App State. Yeah. Damn, the bottom.
I don't even know who coaches Arkansas State anymore. I know our boy Scott Cross is still at Troy, but
it is Brian Hodgson.
Never heard of that.
No, Hodgson. Sorry.
Hodgson.
Hodgson.
Okay. Looks like Alabama assistant. Okay. So he was under. Yeah.
It's there. Kempo has them going 12-6 in conference.
He must have coached with Claunch before.
Yeah.
But anyway.
The Nate Oates coaching tree continues to extend.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, like I said, this is if they finish top 5 in the Sun Belt, that's a successful season to me. Because they were definitely not among that range when the season started.
Yeah, what was the preseason voting for them?
I think they were. Let me see. That's a good question. Preseason poll, men's basketball. They have Arkansas State was projected to win. They're picked 7th, but only by like 4 points ahead of who. Let me see. They're 4 points ahead of. They're 4 points ahead of two teams tied for 8th. So they're around 7th and 9th.
Yeah. We both had them going 9-9 in conference. So
I'll take it. I'll still take it, and I think that's a little bit low now. So
yeah. Real quick, let's do a rundown of the Southland Conference because they have. We have a couple 3 interesting results in particular. One on the women's side, UTRGV beats Stephen F. Austin 78-72, and Charlotte O'Keefe has been like one of the sneaky best players in the conference.
Yes.
I don't have her full stats, but she has to be one of the leaders in the rebounding in the Southland, if not the entire country. She's averaging 10 and 10 on the year. So Charlotte O'Keefe is a hooper, but they had 4 players in double figures. They shot 13 of 27 from 3. RGV did, and SFA in their first game of Southland competition gets a loss. Who'd have thought we'd be here?
This team is. We're gonna have to keep track of this team straight up. Like we've been looking at their results and be like, "Oh, look at that! They won that one. Oh, look at that! They're in that one." And all of a sudden, this is a team that's going to be contending to win the conference. By the way, total rebounding rate, Charlotte O'Keefe, 78th in the country.
Dude.
Oh, that is legit. She can rebound the damn ball. So I am all for the Charlotte O'Keefe experience. If we just talk more, total rebounds per game, 35th in the country. So again, we're gonna have to pay attention to the Vaqueros because on both sides, because the men and women are obviously doing a little bit better, but men aren't any slouches either.
Yeah. The women had lost to Abilene Christian a couple days before, so they're 1-1 in conference. But we had talked about them since they beat Houston on opening night. RGV women, like we've talked about them multiple times here. On the men's side, RGV to this point I thought was one of the better teams in the Southland, like you said. And then all of a sudden they just got blown out by Lamar.
Well, there you go.
RGV was favored by 7 going to this game.
And they get lost by 31. Yeah. 32, sorry. Jesus, yeah.
I didn't watch this game.
I didn't either. I may have to go back and check this out because Alvin Brooks heard us praising
UTRGV. That's a 40 points difference from the spread.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen. That is an anomaly right there. Lamar,
I didn't 60% from 2.
Yeah. Like Lamar had not been playing that great this season.
Their schedule's been weak and they haven't looked good.
We've been waiting on them to really show up. Like they lost to Alabama State, they lost to Akron, they lost to Sam Houston State,
lost to Nebraska Omaha.
So it's like we're like, where is this Lamar team that we loved last year? Well, they start conference play and they beat A&M Corpus Christi by 4, and they beat RGV by 32.
It's a warm up. Don't let your opponents know your next move.
They were sandbagging. They were absolutely sandbagging. They held A&M Corpus Christi to 0 of 13 from 3, by the way.
Jesus.
So that
all right, I'm down.
Lamar early in the Southland is the powerhouse. And the other game I was going to mention is, like I said, Corpus Christi lost to Lamar and then bounces back and beats Stephen F. Austin by 19 on the men's side. that Southland is not making any sense to me right now. I cannot lie, but
if it just clears the way for UTRGV, they shake off this loss. They got to shake off this
shake off the loss,
and then they come back and rise above the flame.
shake off the 30-point loss. Actually, all it tells me is that McNeese is about to go 20-0 again.
that's actually what's gonna happen.
All right, we're here like, oh man, all these fun teams: RGV, Corpus, Lamar.
Like all that means is there's no one to challenge. They will wait
to challenge them, McNeese. But yeah, McNeese hasn't played a conference game yet. So they're the only ones for some reason that didn't play. Lamar 2-0, Nichols 2-0, Northwestern 2-0 somehow. How are they 2-0? They're not any good. Oh, because they played UIW and Houston Christian. Yeah, and SFA 0-2 down here. They have dropped from starting the season at 153 in KenPom down to 223.
Okay.
Jeez. Jeez, 350th in offense. Oh my god.
That's nasty work.
Oh, look at hold on. I'm sorry. Let me share my screen. For those of you who don't have KenPom, it might be worth it just to
that is blood red. Oh my god.
Look at the red.
Oh,
compared to the green. Like, okay, the defense is cool.
Is 364 last?
Yes, 364 is last.
Oh my god.
Dead last. Second to last, third to last in turnovers. Third to last in non-steal turnovers.
Yeah, KenPom has this way of this very obviously because of the colors, but it's very like aggressive way of telling you a team's bad. It's like this team is bad, red everywhere.
Terrible. Terrible. Yeah, 325th in offensive pace too. Like they play slow, they don't shoot a lot of threes. They turn it over.
Yep.
They rebound the ball though. Look at that. Offensive rebound percentage.
They do rebound the ball. I mean, that's basically their offense is what
like
I'm seeing.
Poor man's Texas A&M out here.
Oh, they're somehow making it work to get 500 though.
Dude,
this is like a top 50 team if they like had an average offense.
I can't believe how badly they've fallen down. Yeah, Kyle Keller might need to get something going here.
Yeah, I mean, this was always going to be a weird year for them because I think they replaced a lot, didn't they?
Yeah. But you can't.
No, that don't get me wrong. That's still very bad.
You can't have this. I mean, the last time they went 7-11 in conference in 2019, but that is surrounded by a bunch of 10+ win seasons.
Right.
Since
you gotta have the peak.
Yeah. So yeah. All right, that's all we got for y'all today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to do some superlatives.
Yep.
On Thursdays, kind of like our all Texas teams through a month, just to give some individual shout outs because we've talked about teams so much. I want to shout out some individuals. So maybe that, or maybe just do like, I don't know, 10 favorite players or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's football season's wrapping up. On the high school side, I know we got 2-3 weeks left.
Mm-hmm.
A college side with this playoff, it goes until almost February. So don't hold your breath. But yeah, basketball season, it's almost conference play. So stick with us until then, and we will talk to y'all later.